Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Phil Mackintosh, chief economist at Nasdaq, to discuss the market's reaction to last night's presidential debate. And Phil, it seems as if it did little to reduce fears of volatility or anticipated volatility around the election.
Yeah, I mean, the initial reaction, if you're watching the overnight futures, was pretty negative. The more they talked, the more the futures went down. But today we seem to see a little bit of a bounce. So net, the debates don't usually make much difference to the markets, and this one might not have as much impact as people think either.
All right, moving along, let's take a look at our latest COVID-19 update. Total confirmed infections past that 1 million mark.
Yeah, and I think the point here is just to highlight that Europe is seeing a second wave, and it's really prominent in countries like Spain, and the UK is kind of on an exponential growth path, as are a couple of other countries. But really, the US caseloads that sort of spiked again, I guess you'd almost call it looked like a third wave in the US graphically, when people are attributing that to people going back to college, does seem to have flattened. So it's interesting. Maybe Europe's a bit colder and people are inside a bit earlier than here. Which doesn't speak well to what's going to happen with COVID in the fall and into winter, but definitely shows that it's still out there and it's still contagious, something to worry about.
Yeah, let's move along to consumer confidence. We have a couple of charts here, and it seems as if they're contra to each other, at least counterintuitive anyway. You have retail stores closing and record bankruptcies and so forth, yet consumer confidence really hasn't downticked as much as you might think.
Yeah, it depends which consumer confidence index you look at. Most of the consumer confidence indexes are down significantly from the highs that sort of led to the bubbly market that we had pre-COVID. So I think some of these indexes are registering confidence levels that aren't really representative of how a lot of the people in the economy feel, and you can see that from the different indexes. Obviously, the University of Michigan, which is alongside the conference board here, is telling a completely different story. And it does make sense when you think about how different the recoveries have been. I mean, the other chart that we're looking at here is, if you're looking at sports goods, if you're looking at grocery stores, we know that consumption is pretty close to back to normal, but you can see the disparate effects. So if you're working in a theme park, the news is not good today. Same with airlines. There's a lot of stories about people being laid off potentially more permanently than we thought. Even in the oil industry, with oil prices still sort of stuck at $40, a lot of the US producers are starting to look at reducing headcount too. So, there's a lot of unemployed people that are potentially going to be unemployed for longer than they thought. The good news is it seems like a lot of them have been saving some of the initial stimulus money, but that won't last forever. And eventually the confidence levels are going to filter through to the spending levels you'd think as well. I mean, they typically do.
And finally, let's take a look at U.S. gasoline demand year over year.
Yeah, I mean, that speaks to the story that's going on in the world, doesn't it? We aren't flying on planes. We aren't doing as much of the things that we've done typically. And it's pretty much a swoosh with a slight downtick. So it speaks to basically the way the recovery's worked. It started to look like a V shape. It sort of rolled over with the headwinds. And right now, as we're heading into winter, it's sort of showing that production seems to be really strong, but a lot of sectors in the economy are not firing on all cylinders. And so we're not getting back to pre-COVID levels as quickly as we probably hoped.
All right, Phil, thanks so much for joining us on Trade Talks.
You're welcome, Jill.
All right, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.